Hey everyone. We haven't done a film dissection or video essay or a classic review of any kind, so this is going to be a little weird. But a couple of months ago I realized the 10-year anniversary of The Dark Knight is coming up, so we had to make a video about it.
It'll be a little change of pace to show you guys we actually like something, whatever that means.
These types of videos include very obvious observations to the point where the narrator is borderline describing the plot beat for beat and passing that off as their in-depth analysis. So we're going to make an effort to make this analysis of a movie that has been talked about to death feel fresh, hopefully. But first, we have to talk about the things that we don't like about The Dark Knight. I mean, it wouldn't be a proper video if we didn't at least express some grievances with the greatest superhero movie of all time.
A lot of these complaints are very minor, but they bother us every time we see it, so here we go. Oh wait, my bad. I didn't say it right.
And here we go.
The IMAX shots are very distracting. Why wasn't the entire film just filmed on IMAX? I really hate the ratio change so freaking much.
In the parking lot scene, why does Batman randomly appear with his hand on the barrel of the gun as if the guy didn't see him standing there? Can people not see Batman because he's out of frame? Is that his superpower? It's not like he's hiding behind anything. If he took one step backward, he would fall multiple stories down to his death or something. It just looks weird, especially when we cut to the wide shot and he's just standing there. Along with the theme of Batman randomly standing in places out of frame, during the fundraiser, was Batman just standing there in the middle of the room when Joker had Rachel the whole time, waiting for Joker to say something witty for him to respond to?
A little fight in you. I like that. And you're gonna love me.
It seemed weird and cheesy. Also, how did Rachel and Batman survive that fall completely unscathed? The cape barely even broke their fall. Their velocity doesn't change until we cut to them gently hitting the car, but that's not how falling works. Whatever.
Let's not do that again.
How, in 2008, is Lau able to video call the mob bosses in a kitchen from a plane with a janky-ass TV set? And how is he able to see what's going on in the kitchen with no camera on the mob boss's end of the call? Also, the connection on this video call is flawless in contrast to the fact that dial-up just got replaced by broadband at the time. It's been 10 years since this movie came out, and I almost always get that poor connection thing at least once per FaceTime call. Even in 2018, this part of the film is pure science fiction. Anyway, I also don't understand the how, the what, the why behind Gordon faking his death. Was that the plan the whole time? Did he tell people, hey, when Joker strikes tomorrow, I'm gonna fake my death, but I don't know what method Joker is gonna use, so I'm just gonna improv it? How was he able to stop his heartbeat when people checked it? Who was in on it? It raises so many logistical questions I really don't want to think about as an audience member.
I don't really know if I consider this a flaw, but I freaking hate the random guy who yells,
No more dead cops!
The truck flipping is awesome, minus the fact you can see where they used hydraulics to propel the truck, but again, it's still cool. The interrogation scene is great, but that continuity error is so fucking distracting. Why couldn't you have used one of the shots instead of alternating? I'm sure all of the takes were amazing, so why didn't the movie just stick to one shot? And where was the script supervisor when this scene was being shot to say, hey, the Joker's arm wasn't there in the last take, can we make sure that the continuity is right? Well, the script supervisor can say anything, but it's up to the director ultimately to make that call, and he should have. Bad continuity is way more immersion breaking than bad acting in my opinion. Also, why is the camera in the reflection? 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 There are like 30 solutions to this problem. Why is it in this $180 million movie? Look, let me show you one of the solutions to this problem.
Bulls, and you think they'll save you. Bulls, and you think they'll save you. See?
It's fixed. How did the explosion at the MCU knock out everyone but the Joker? Does knowing an explosion is about to happen make you immune to the blast if you know it's coming? Besides all of the dogs Batman kills in this movie, he also kills Harvey Dent. I have a problem with this, but I ultimately have to let it slide. There hasn't been one live-action Batman film where Batman didn't kill somebody, but in this film, more than any other film, it has a purpose. Batman takes responsibility for it. He even takes responsibility for the murders that he didn't even do, because he felt so strongly that what Harvey Dent stood for had the effect on the city that he wanted when he became Batman in the first place. Although this isn't exactly what I would consider a flaw, it's annoying. And I'm still waiting for the Batman movie where he'll do anything to make sure that no one dies because Batman shouldn't be killing anybody. Period. It defeats the purpose of his character.
How does cutting a smile into Gamble's cheek immediately kill him?
And now that we're done being negative, let's focus on how amazing this movie is. It's so good that when it wasn't nominated for Best Picture, the Academy doubled the amount of films that could be nominated for Best Picture. Although that seems fine, it's been to the Academy's detriment to just give Best Picture noms to movies that don't deserve it, when they could have easily just not nominated The Reader, Milk, or the most egregious nominee of that year, Slumdog Millionaire, and given one of those spots to The Dark Knight, because no one was talking about those movies after their initial runs, and they certainly aren't talking about those fucking movies now. It still boggles my mind that that movie won Best Picture.
There you have it, the official nominees for the 2008 Oscars. Dalton Ross, No Dark Knight for Best Picture. No Dark Knight for Best Picture. No Dark Knight for Best Picture.
Yeah, No Dark Knight for Best Picture.
The Dark Knight is my favorite film of all time. When I think of films in my life that have truly inspired me and had a huge impact on who I am as a person, this is the film that I think about. My life literally revolves around this movie. I'm not exaggerating either. I'm not sure that I could be who I am today without The Dark Knight. I quote lines from this movie whenever I can. Also, as an avid fan of Batman, this probably has to be his most definitive film. Sure, it deviates away from what the comics it is based on have done. The character of Bruce Wayne in the comics has always done whatever he could to protect his city. In this film, this is ever present. Bruce Wayne does whatever he can in this movie to protect Gotham, no matter the toll it may have on his personal life and on his physical body. When he inevitably fails over and over and over again, we can see that he takes this personally. We feel the sadness and sorrow when he fails. I think this is what Batman is all about. Besides the cool gadgets and awesome jujitsu karate fighting thing, he is a man that wants to make sure what happened to him in the past doesn't happen to anyone else. That is what makes Batman my favorite hero. He is willing to put all the weight on himself in order to do the right thing. Sure, the other Batman films may have moments that try to bring Bruce Wayne down to this level, but The Dark Knight does it so well that the other films can't even compare.
I don't think there will ever be a superhero/comic book movie that will ever be better than The Dark Knight, period. You want to know why? Because Christopher Nolan is the best director that has ever touched this type of material. Before the filmmakers who are making comic book films today started working in this genre, they weren't making cult classics that are pushing the boundaries of the way people watch films like Nolan did with Memento. And even in the middle of making this genre-defining trilogy, he managed to make The Prestige, which is a lot of people's favorite Christopher Nolan film, and Inception, which managed to be one of the films that will define this decade we're in right now, and has dramatically changed the way films are marketed. That's insane. But the thing that will always keep this movie at the top is you. Whenever a comic book movie comes out and it's anywhere between above average or good, the debate suddenly begins of, is this movie better than The Dark Knight? And the answer has always proven to be no, because whenever another film of a certain quality comes out, the debate isn't between whether that movie or the previous movie is the best movie in the genre. It's always, is this movie better than The Dark Knight? The fact that this question still comes up after 30 of these things have come out in the past 10 years proves my point. Moving on. Whenever people talk positively about The Dark Knight, it's going to be very hard for me to disagree with anyone's points. But, there's always a but. There are 3 things that people say about this movie that completely boggle my goddamn mind. Number 1 being, it's not just a superhero film, ... It's a crime epic, but with the guy running around in a costume.
This movie's almost 10 years old, and I think that it holds up because it's not just a comic book movie. Because this movie is such a crime caper, it ups the ante about everything. It makes everything feel a little bit more real.
Ah, yes, great analysis, but, excuse me, sir, what was the comic book then? The comics are crime epics to a certain extent with a guy who dresses up in a costume. I don't understand this analysis at all. It's basically saying, it's like the comics, so I like it. Unlike some of the recent storylines this decade like Batman Earth 1 or Court of the Owls or Death of the Family, which lean a little on the horror side, most of the Batman books as we know it are all crime epics. Whatever. The second thing is something that I feel is directed more towards the filmmaker since The Dark Knight came out. The Dark Knight is such an influential film that I feel like over the past 10 years, the movies that have been influenced by The Dark Knight have shown that the filmmakers took away the wrong parts of what made it great, or didn't really have a full understanding of why the movie is so good. Well, now that I think about it, there are a lot of DCEU people I see on the internet with more or less the same opinion, so it's not just the filmmakers. And that opinion is that it's good because it's dark. So whenever I see one of these movies, I can see the director saying, The Dark Knight is dark, so I'll be as dark and serious as possible, and that means my movie is good too. And the people who watch it are like, yeah, it's dark and it's serious and so. Although The Dark Knight is serious and dark and literally has someone swinging from a noose dressed in a Batman costume, it's also William Wilder-like in that it's balanced with a tremendous amount of comedy.
I speak for the rest of the board. and Mr. Wayne in expressing our own excitement.
I need a new suit.
Yeah, 3 buttons is a little 90s, Mr. Wayne.
Natasha, are you the
Prima ballerina for the Moscow Ballet.
Wow. Harvey's taking me next week.
Really? So, you're into ballet?
How will it hold up against dogs?
We talking Rottweilers or Chihuahuas? Should do fine against cats.
And last but not least,
It's a funny world we live in. Speaking of which, you know how I got these scars?
No. But I know how you got these.
I'm by no means saying that you need comedy in your movie to be a good movie, because movies aren't stand-up. You don't need to laugh. And there are plenty of films that I love that are completely humorless and are infinitely dark, but this film simply isn't that. But it's not the MCU either. The comedy is very scarce in comparison, and it's organic and comes from the characters, but it also fits within the fabric of the movie. It never stops in its tracks to be like, hey, it's time to laugh now. And the third thing is something that I'm going to spend the rest of my time on this video doing, which is proving that Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker isn't the main reason why this movie is great in the first place. There are people who genuinely think that if Heath Ledger's performance wasn't in it, this movie wouldn't be on the pedestal that it is. Although it's a once-in-a-lifetime performance, to say that this movie doesn't have a whole lot of merit without it is fucking insanity. Anyway, there are a couple of main things that I want to touch on that for me put this film on the pedestal that it deserves. That being the production design, the cinematography, and the acting. The score and the sound design are also great, but at the moment I have a lot more to say about the other 3 things, so yeah. I love that the city has so much of an influence on the production design. Although this could have been mostly a cinematography choice for natural lighting and faster camera setups while shooting, I feel like this was definitely a conscious choice also by the production designer, the cinematographer, and the director in tandem. Bruce Wayne's penthouse is literally all windows to signify what his focus is on, saving the city. You can see it in Bruce Wayne's conference room as well. Bruce has the conversation with Rachel about not being Batman anymore, with the city behind them, with it literally roaring underneath his dialogue. Listen.
Harvey may not know you well enough to understand when you're making fun of him, but I do.
No, I meant every word. You know that day that you once told me about when Gotham would no longer need Batman? It's coming.
You can't ask me to wait for that.
It's happening now.
It could have easily been inside with the party, but besides this obvious ode to one of Nolan's favorite films, Heat, them being outside is clearly intentional.
I want to talk about the establishing shots really fast in this movie because they are all so great. Look at this. Now look at this. Now look at this. Everything looks so fucking pretty. I love it. This also has to go into one problem I had about Gotham as a whole. In Batman Begins, the city felt more alive. In this movie, it just feels like they went to any city to film. The skyline could easily be literally any major city in the world. I did not like how we went from, oh wow, we're in Gotham, to, oh wow, they shot in Chicago.
Well, doesn't it make sense, since Batman has cleaned up the city dramatically, that the visual aesthetic of the city would also change?
Bro, just keep talking, I don't want to hear that.
Okie dokie. The city is also shown in the background when Harvey and Rachel leave the courthouse. The press conference where Dent says that he's Batman is almost completely engulfed by the city. And it's behind Harvey in his office in the scene where Gordon visits him, where they talk about cleaning up the city. I like the production design specifically for this scene because I think it could be interpreted in multiple ways, just based on where the actors are in relation to each other and the objects they share their respective shots with. Let me explain. Behind Gordon is what I believe to be a bunch of law books or maybe encyclopedias relating to law, and behind Dent is the city. Gordon wants Dent to give him warrants to certain banks so he can bring down the mob, and Dent wants to help, but he doesn't know what he's getting himself into. Both of their overall goals are represented by what's behind Harvey, the city, and keeping it safe. But what Gordon wants in this scene specifically from Harvey is represented directly behind him. The other way you can look at it is, throughout the movie you can barely see Gordon in an office. He works on the streets, he's the shot caller, he's out there in the shit. And when we see Dent doing his job, it's indoors mostly, in a courtroom, in the mayor's office, etc. He's book smart. So in this scene, what each character is more comfortable with is represented by what's on the opposite side of the room from them. And they're literally in each other's way, which is something that is repeated throughout the whole movie. Both of these interpretations of the scene, I think, are supported in the scene when Dent, Gordon, and Batman all meet together for the first time. There's a 360-degree dolly shot around all 3 characters showing that they're all united in their pursuit for justice, but the dialogue dialogue shows that they're going about it differently. All of this is happening while the city is roaring behind them and the shot comes to a halt when Batman interjects in the conversation, sort of as a metaphor for the entire previous movie. It's fucking awesome. The city, or what he stands for, is usually always behind Harvey Dent in the frame, and the more his soul becomes corrupted by Rachel's death, the city and him become separated, almost like he's losing himself, or the focus he once had is getting blurry. And by the end of the movie, he's surrounded by darkness and blackness, like the other side of the coin that once had a face but is now disfigured. Dent lying there on top of the charred rubble that is Rachel's impromptu gravesite is the best visual representation of how her death consumed him. The way that the production design and cinematography is used to tell this story is awesome. I love how when Harvey and Rachel are held hostage having their last conversation, the lighting setup for both rooms is the direct opposite from each other. It's like Harvey's descent into Two-Face has begun before it even starts. The cinematography in this film is miles better than Batman Begins, to be honest. Batman Begins is lit more or less like a standard Hollywood movie from the 2000s. Very simple shots, a lot of overly lit or overexposed lighting in most scenes, even in the nighttime. It has this sodium vapor, almost sepia-like color palette to the Gotham scenes that isn't necessarily bad. It fit with the griminess of Gotham in that movie, but it's definitely of the trends of that era. But The Dark Knight is more courageous in its lighting choices. Not afraid to go very high contrast, a lot of natural lighting. It's lit a lot like an A24 indie film in that regard. The camera placement and compositional choices themselves aren't crazy in comparison to Batman Begins, but it can be flashy and purposeful when it needs to. Like, I love how they frame Rachel sitting between Harvey and Bruce at the dinner scene, and when Harvey shows affection toward Rachel, it's first shown from Bruce's point of view, and then subsequently, there's a shot of Bruce in between them, which is followed by Bruce vocalizing his support for Dent, which is not to help Dent necessarily, it's to make Rachel happy. It's brilliant. I would compare the film's cinematography to a mix between Heat, which is one of Nolan's favorite films, which he homages a lot, and The Godfather.
The camera work in this film is so well done. For example, in the interrogation scene, what could be a simple A-B conversation is enhanced by the slow dolly moves of the camera, while each character is either talking or listening. These small, noticeable camera movements can be seen throughout in the film, and I think that they should be praised more often for making a scene that could just be a regular scene go above and beyond. The editing in this movie is so good. I love the interconnected stories that happen all at once. For example, the mayor giving a speech, the multiple rounds of gunfire, cut along with the tracking shots of people while Bruce is trying to figure out what's happening. It happens throughout the movie multiple times, and each time it is so well thought out and flows perfectly. I absolutely adore it. And a part of why the entire third act is so nail-biting is because of the editing. You really don't know what exactly is going to happen. Will the boats blow up? Will the Joker be caught? Will the cops figure out who the hostages are and who the cops are? Find out on the next episode of Dragon Ball Z. Okay, now it's time to talk about the Joker. What can I say about this man that has not already been said by someone out there? He's great. The performance is incredible and thought-provoking. He brings up points about establishing chaos that are not only true, but are dangerously true to today's world. The entire conversation with Harvey in the hospital talking about this is a great example.
You know what I noticed? Nobody panics when things go according to plan. Even if the plan is horrifying. If tomorrow I tell the press that, like, a gangbanger will get shot, or a truckload of soldiers will be blowing up, nobody panics. Because it's all part of the plan. Introduce a little anarchy. Upset the established order, and everything becomes chaos. I'm an agent of chaos. Oh, and you know the thing about chaos? It's fair.
This metaphor compares to the real world. Why don't people care about the quote, truckload of soldiers? He's literally introduced murdering his own goons in the bank heist scene. The film is sprinkled with moments that have chaotic overtones when you first look at it, but you can't help but just laugh along with the madness. Another example could be the hospital scene. The building is being blown up, but we laugh at the Joker as he walks slowly away from it in a nurse's outfit. It's super sadistic, but it's great. It's pure entertainment. We can't help but look at this and just smile. The improv is great, and I love that this is practical. Movies need to be made more like this. Heath Ledger comes across as this terrifying entity that could burn this goddamn city to the ground. His presence on screen freaking engages you into this trance-like state where you can't keep your eyes off him. You want to see everything that he could do, and you want to know why he's a step above everybody else. We all think he's just some crazy mobster trying to take control of the other mobsters in the city, but by the end of the film, we can see that he just craves disorder. People say that he is the main draw to this film, and although I find that freaking ridiculous because of all the other talent we get, I do understand why they say this. He's unpredictable, and he's great to watch on screen. I love the "you wanna know how I got these scars" monologue so goddamn much.
You wanna know how I got these scars? Well, you look nervous. Is it the scars? You wanna know how I got them? Speaking of which, you know how I got these scars?
No, but I know how you got these.
I love when he first walks into Harvey's party. I love the Nurse Jackie outfit. I just love this villain. There is no other villain in any superhero movie that can come close to this level of pure enjoyment. I really do hope this lasts. Sure, the 24 new Jokers may come out with their new films, but Heath's Joker is the definitive on-screen Joker forever.
The Dark Knight is probably one of my favorite character introductions of all time. Of course, the bank heist is supposed to provide as the catalyst of how the Joker got the attention of Batman, the mob, and the GCPD, but its primary purpose is to set up this new take on the Joker. And also to homage Heat again, because if you couldn't tell already by this being the third instance of me mentioning that movie, he really loves this movie. He really loves the bank heist from Heat. He also loves it so much that he got William Fichtner to be in it. After this sequence, you know all you really need to know about the Joker. Although the rest of the film on the surface level tries to convince you that he's a dog chasing cars, he's a schemer just like everyone else. During the whole sequence, you see these guys who are trying to rob the bank who think they have an understanding of who the Joker is. They talk about his looks, and the way they interpret it gives off the impression that they think he's some wacky, insane dude.
I know why they call him the Joker.
So why do they call him the Joker?
I heard he wears makeup.
Makeup?
Yeah, to scare people. You know, war paint.
Much like how most of the characters see him throughout the movie.
It won't work for a freak.
Very much like how most of the audience sees him, and he bests all of them by telling them to kill the person they're working with once they've done their job, without thinking about whether or not they would also be killed. One person wises up to it, but it's already too late, much like Batman by the end of the movie. And he more or less manipulates the rest of the characters in the movie. For example, he'll switch the address of the hostages he's hiding on purpose because of how Batman reacted to Rachel being thrown out the window.
You know, for a while there, I thought you really were a dent. The way you threw yourself after her.
He wanted Harvey to survive because he wanted to show Batman he was right. Although the Joker gets caught, he gets what he wants. He metaphorically killed Batman, he corrupted Harvey Dent to the point where it got him killed, and Commissioner Gordon has to live with the fact that the system didn't prevail, and the people who he stood up for failed him. The more I see this movie, the more I see the Joker as just a man, not this enigma, or this idea of chaos that has been perpetuated on him. I see the Joker as just a man partly because of what his character does in the movie, but mostly it's from the performance by Heath Ledger, which includes the makeup that Ledger designed himself for the character. He really brings out the humanity in this character. He could have played this as big as possible, but instead he chooses to do it in bursts, and let his appearance do all the theatrics for him. I'm incredibly fond of the range of his voice work, where he'll go from speaking at an earnest and almost even-keeled level that gives off the impression that he's trying to befriend whatever character he's interacting with.
They're only as good as the world allows them to be.
To a satirical / belittling / anything in the realm of mockery.
Who did you leave him with? Your people?
All the way to a deep commanding tone with the implications of an abusive father.
You do, Brian. You really do. Huh? Yeah. Oh, shush. So you think Batman's made Gotham a better place? Look at me.
Look at me!
Another thing that makes this performance for me is the little gestures that he does. It's so measured and often comedic, and to me, they all serve as the acting equivalent of seasoning. The scene for me that sort of encapsulates all of my feelings is his final scene in the movie, where he's upside down and Batman thinks he's got the upper hand on him. Ledger uses the voice, the gestures, and his total commitment to the role to leave the film on such a high note that its reverberations have been felt in the decades since. Not to mention the fact that his performance is supported in this scene by the genius 180-degree camera movement, which brings us truly for the first time in his point of view. With the world literally upside down, and the way he swings in and out of the light is incredible, and I think the performance really speaks for itself. Christian Bale gets a lot of shit for the Batman voice.
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
And I love the Batman voice. It would be almost completely impractical to put a voice changer in any of his suits, and it would compromise his identity if he talked normal. Its origins allegedly started from Christian Bale's frustration with how hot and restrictive the suit in Batman Begins was.
Swear to me!
But without that in mind, the rage that exudes the character is completely supported by that voice. It works. And I think he uses it with a lot of maturity, only using select moments to really growl like a beast, and when the moment calls for it, he can be tender and still be gravelly at the same time.
With the Joker, cannot win.
I know we don't get a whole lot of Bruce Wayne being Bruce Wayne than people would have liked, but in the spurts that we do get, I think he plays it better than anyone ever could. He brings such a pompousness that a Ben Affleck or a Michael Keaton performance couldn't reach.
So let's put a couple tables together.
I'm not sure that they'll let us.
Oh, they should. I own the place.
And with the tenderness that I was alluding to earlier, when all of his layers come off and he's truly in despair, I think Bale nails the exact emotional beats he needed to hit. In this scene after Rachel dies, it's almost like he's completely numb. This performance by Bale shows a wealth of range, and for me it stacks up with Ledger's more flashy and celebrated performance.
She was gonna wait for me, Alfred. Dad doesn't know. He can never know.
Gary Oldman's performance is something that if looked at by itself, most people would think is pretty good, but also it's not the shining star of the movie. But it's a truly great supporting performance. And if you look at this in the grand scheme of his filmography, it really shows how good he is at making really small acting choices that legitimize his character as a real person, seeing as though he's mostly famous for playing really big and out there characters.
Bring me everyone. What do you mean everyone?
I want to see more people be like Jim Gordon in real life. He's great. He fights for what's right and is willing to do whatever it takes to get justice done. He's really the people's champion. He was even willing to play dead to try to bring Joker in. For real, when his wife learns of his death, we get the heartbreaking scene of her reaction, and it has one of the best shots of Batman in all of cinema. I've been using heartbreaking a lot, but like it's all so heartbreaking. These characters mesh so well together, and I wish we could get more of these in superhero films today. It doesn't feel like this anymore. Over the years, people have stupidly criticized this film because of the character of Harvey Dent. It is said that this character is unnecessary to the overall plot and that he is the most uninteresting character in the story. The film is hyper-focused on Harvey. He starts off kind of like Bruce Wayne. He's a man that wants to protect his city, and he doesn't care about any of the repercussions. It isn't until the love of his life dies that he has a tragic change of character. What makes this more tragic than, say, any other love story in film, in my opinion, is how we follow Dent throughout the entire film. To see this character's drastic transformation puts a pit in the audience's stomach. We wanted him to succeed, and to see him become exactly what he was fighting against is devastating. He's willing to do anything at the end to right the wrong of Rachel's death, even kill himself.
Aaron Eckhart probably gives my favorite performance in the movie. It's probably not hard to tell because I have been talking a lot about his character throughout this video. I saw this film in the theater when I was 11, and I knew that the Two-Face thing was coming because I was already a huge Batman fan, but the more that I watch this film, the more I see it's about him. Everything is about him. It's almost like The Great Gatsby, in that the story revolves around the rise and fall of a particular character, but it's told from someone else's point of view. As my other half was saying earlier, it's asinine to make the proclamation that his character is in the way, or unnecessary. Just about every beat of this movie after the inciting incident revolves around Harvey Dent. He even says the thesis of the movie, for Christ's sake.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
And I think Aaron Eckhart plays it flawlessly. Sure, he does a lot of yelling.
I wouldn't! You can't give in! Say it! Rachel!
But that's how his character expresses himself. It's what makes his transition into Two-Face more believable, that he's always had this wickedness inside of him. I love the amount of certainty and resolve that Eckhart brings to both parts of the performance, whether he's the White Knight that Gotham needs or Two-Face. And it's a shame that he didn't see a meteoric rise in Hollywood like he should have, because he's truly a tremendous actor. He even plays dead good. I love that the Two-Face identity isn't in the movie just because it was in the comics. It easily could have been, but it's filled with intent from why it's there to how it's presented. It's there as a visual representation that a part of him is literally dead, and all of the good in him died with Rachel. And the film could have gone with a goofy way to present the disfigured half of his face, but it's burnt off and raw, and it perfectly matches the aesthetic of the film. Not to mention the fact that the CG effect still holds up, which is insane.
Speaking of Rachel, she's fine, I guess. It's a shame Katie Holmes didn't come back to play her, as I really liked her character in Batman Begins. In this film, Maggie Gyllenhaal does her best, but I don't think her performance is as dynamic as Katie. Katie was given more to do, but in this film, she's always on on the back burner to Harvey, or screwing around with my man Bruce's feelings, I feel like she should have gotten more to do and accomplish.
Well, I think Maggie Gyllenhaal did a better job than Katie Holmes did. I think she brought so much more to the character than Holmes ever did, even if she had less to do. To have more scenes of her doing stuff that Harvey was already doing would seem redundant and unnecessary, especially in a movie that's already 2.5 hours long. I love the choice that she makes in her Joker scene to try her best not to look at him, but she can't help it. I also love the transition she makes when she realizes that she's not gonna be saved. Look at it!
No, not me! Why are you coming for me? No! Rachel! Rachel!
Harvey. Okay.
Rachel!
Harvey, it's okay. It's all right. Listen.
Also, what more of a role could she have played besides having her death influence the trajectory of the rest of the film?
Well, I love the dynamic between Alfred and Bruce Wayne. The mentor-mentee aspect of their relationship is fleshed out so great in this. This relationship was previously explored in Batman Begins, but I think that this film fully explores it. For example, in the scene in which Bruce tells Alfred he's going to turn himself in, Alfred jokes with him and says, "But I did bloody tell you." To see this relationship stable even in the most dire situations puts a smile on the audience's face to show them that the light can come through the darkness in many forms. It just makes it more heartbreaking when Alfred goes behind Bruce's back and burns that letter that Rachel was going to give him. By the time we get to the end of the film, we are left with questions about morals, about what is right and what is wrong, and the choices one must make in order to keep peace in one's life. What really drives this film home is the sacrifice Batman is willing to do in order to protect everything that Harvey has stood for.
He didn't do anything wrong.
I feel is the definitive line in his character arc, as it shows just how far he is willing to go to protect Gotham.
I think this film is brilliant. Almost flawless, but it's pretty damn close. It's been talked about to death in all different arenas, including politics, where people make the case that this film is a commentary on the Bush administration's enforcement of the Patriot Act and how we dealt with terrorism. And I think that's a totally valid argument to be made.
You took my sonar concept and applied it to every phone in the city. With half the city feeding you sonar, you can image all of Gotham. This is wrong.
I've got to find this man, Lucius.
At what cost?
Even the last president in American history, Barack Obama, used the film as a metaphor for ISIS, which is shown in this article from The Atlantic. What he has to say sort of brings up the idea of chaos, which my other half has alluded to the whole video, and which is overwhelmingly recognized as the theme of this movie. And while I can totally understand why chaos would be the consensus, for my interpretation of the film, the big theme is identity. And sure, most films deal with identity on varying levels, but I think this film is completely about identity. Everyone in this film has a choice about what kind of person they want to be, what kind of person they are. What their identity is proven by the actions they take. Sounds a lot like a quote from Batman Begins.
It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me.
The idea of identity is scattered throughout the DNA of the film. We have the obvious dichotomy of Bruce and Batman. He wants to stop being Batman to be with Rachel, but the death of his parents define who he is, and he has no choice but to be Batman. Harvey Dent has to pick between his morals and his rage, and ends up reformatting his morals to fit his rage. As I said before, Harvey introduces the thesis statement of the film.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
And that quote is about identity.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I can do those things because I'm not a hero. Not like Dent.
Alfred has to choose whether to be honest with Bruce or to suppress the truth from him. Lucius has to decide whether helping a vigilante is worth compromising his ethics. Rachel has to choose between someone she's known her whole life and an equally great guy but who is more consistent. Gordon has to choose between trusting Harvey or trusting his people, and every time he chooses his people, it's to his detriment.
I'll get you your warrants, but I want your trust.
As soon as your office got involved...
My office? You're sitting down there with scum like Wirtz and Ramirez and you're talking... Oh yeah, Gordon. I almost had your rookie cold on a racketeering beat.
Don't try and cloud the fact that clearly Maroney's got people in your office, Dent.
Got a date with a pretty upset girlfriend.
For your counsel.
Harvey, I need to know which of my men I can trust. Why would you listen to me now? I'm sorry, Harvey.
No. No, you're not.
Even the people of the city have to choose who they really are. Are they lawless in search of their own self-interest? Or are they inherently good? Like this guy who boasts about how bad the prisoners are on the other boat and says he's willing to get his hands dirty. But when it comes down to it, the only person who doesn't have to make a choice about his identity is the Joker. He talks about people being cowards in their last moments, and when he's falling down a skyscraper face first into what would be his final moments, he shows us who he truly is. The same guy we've seen throughout the whole movie. His identity is secure. He's never compromised. And in that way, he wins as well.
This film is my baby. I love it with all my heart. I continue to watch it at least once every couple of months just to remind myself that fantastic works of cinema can actually be made. It is the cleanser we need in today's huge superhero renaissance. It truly is a masterpiece in every sense of the word. Maybe we'll get another Dark Knight someday. Maybe we won't. If we don't, I would be totally okay with that. I'm obviously giving The Dark Knight a 10 out of 10.
In conclusion, like I said before, I think this movie is brilliant. And I think it would be pretty cool if a better movie in this genre came out so we have more things to love. But as this video has articulated for you, there's a whole lot for us to love already in this film. And I'm giving The Dark Knight a 9 out of 10. Please like and subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Bye-bye.